This is the best piece of redstone I've ever designed, and it can make the player go really fast, really freaking fast, okay? For reference, this is 5,500 blocks in 1 second, which is about Mach 16. Now, for reference, the fastest plane in a real life ever made is the NASA X-43, which reached Mach 9.6, just under Mach 10. Mach 1 is the speed of sound, which is already very fast. Now, this is accelerating you from 0, and with 3 charges, which I'll explain the charge system in a second, to Mach 16 in a matter of half a second, which would break you. It would pulverize you if this was real life. You would become goo. You would be a human pancake. Yeah. So anyways, this machine is very powerful. And it is also quite stressing because the way that this works is, well, I'll explain the redstone in a bit, and the redstone is very complex and uses wind charges and stuff. But let me just explain the UI here, the setup. So basically what I like to do is I like to, make sure I sleep in the bed, make sure my respawn point is set, because whenever I'm flying over there, I just do /kill to get back to here. Now, back here, you'll want to hit this button to start charging. I'm not going to do it quite yet, because if I bring it into my visual field of view, it will crash my game, and it will crash yours too. So don't do it. In case something goes wrong, you can do /kill at E type equals Minecraft Breeze wind charge, and it will clear all of the currently stuck ones or whatever from the area, and that's all fine and dandy. Now, you can hit this wind charge thing, and it will trigger these sides, and it will trigger all of these units and start generating wind charges. So, let's just do that right here. And you see, it also lights up that. So I'm going to go down here. Whenever it does that, it also sends a pulse down to this dropper. And it puts more and more into the topper with a comparator. And eventually, you get this, which I think this amount of charges is enough, theoretically speaking, to get ones to the Farlands, with the appropriate angling and difficulty with math and stuff. Now, I haven't been able to actually achieve that, and I'll explain why I need help with that later. But let's just wait for a second, speed this up. Now that we hear breezes hitting their wind charges against blocks, we know that in a second we'll hear note blocks, which will indicate that the wind charges are going into place. Give it a second. You can barely hear the dispensers there. There's the note blocks. The dispensers are for the water. And now that they're in place, we can hit this and get the machine primed. Now, the more wind charges you have, the longer this process will take, because the slower the tick speed will be, because the game will eventually start being overloaded. The rendering engine was not meant to handle this many wind charges. So make sure not to look too far down and under there, because it will render the wind charges and you'll crash. But you always do that once by accident, and then boom, and then you're off. You just have to jump in and activate your elytra. And see, I've already gained 12,000 X, but I'm also at 6,000, 7,000 Y, 1,300 X, 1,400 X, about 1,400 X and 8,000 Y. No, 14,000 X, 8,000 Y. Sorry, that's what I meant to say. And if you glide at a good angle like this, you can get about 10 blocks of X direction for every block down in the Y direction. So by the time I get to Y equals 0, I'll be another 80,000 plus 14,000. So 94,000. And that's on one charge. I only did one charge there for the sake of time. As far as I can tell, it's a linear. So if you get double the wind charges, you get double the distance. If you get quadruple the wind charges, you get quadruple the distance. Assuming that all other factors are the same. Your angle, the way you're positioned next to the wind charges, etc. But in general, it's a linear formula, which is really helpful for the sake of the math. So let's say I went to 84,000 blocks here. Unfortunately, that would mean I need 10 100 times, 150 times more than that, ish, to get to the Farlands. And that's my goal, but I'll talk about that in a second. Let me just do /kill and return. Now, this machine is very sensitive, and eventually it gets to the point where you cannot charge anymore. This is the amount that I've calculated, the amount of charges, you know, 1 shovel for every charge, that I predict would be able to get you to the Farlands. Now, I have not been able to test this and confirm, because I go anything beyond 4 or 5 charges, and the game starts to lag so much it doesn't actually get the wind charges to where they're supposed to be right here, and it just doesn't work. It doesn't crash the game, but it can't, the tick speed is so slow it can't deal with it. Now you can individually tune how much wind charges there are per charge, but these modules here, this actually whole back section is designed by another small YouTuber who I will put their video in the description, and they have the world download and stuff if you want just this section of the wind charge generation. Basically what it does is it makes these breezes, you have to capture breezes in minecarts. It's a pain in the butt, I imagine, to put it in survival, but you have to, they shoot their little charges. These are little design changes by me to make it a little bit more reliable, but they go into powdered snow and then get locked and become static thanks to the way that these pistons are triggered, and it moves them across and then up into here. And eventually, once all of these are done, you'll get 64 wind charges per unit here. So 64, 128, 256, and another 128, which I'm not going to do the math of that in my head. And then eventually this dispenser is triggered for just a second, and it lets them slide very slowly across until eventually they hit those, and they get pushed down to here by that piston. And then once you hit the button, the note block with the redstone torch, it'll push them out into the middle, and then this slime block flying machine will push with this wall, push them all into here. And then whenever you go from the top and hit that piece of string there with the observer, it will activate this slime block and make them land kind of there. You can see that slab there. It's a little, actually I've got free cam. There's a stair here, and it'll launch them into the stair, and it'll be at pretty much the perfect angle for these to hit you. It hits you slightly up. You could get rid of this block and replace it with another sign if you want to mess around with the angles a bit, but this is what I found generally works best for distance. Now, I've done a lot of testing with this, and I can't confirm whether this is the best way of doing it, but I think it is. And this is a heck of a machine to build ever. But I think with all of the ways that this is done, theoretically, if you had a strong enough computer, you could have an infinite range with this. Now, there are other machines that do this a lot differently and more efficient. Just look at Doc M77 with his big minecart rail cannon thing that he uses in EchoCraft Season 10. This isn't anything like that. This is not easy, but a little bit simpler to build in survival than something like that. You're not relying on crazy redstone wizardry. This is basically just pure grit and having to gather the materials, but the rest of the actual construction is pretty simple and not super. You don't have to be a genius to build it. You can just get the materials and build it and understand how it works. Now, the problem with this is that the farthest I've ever been able to get is about 500,000 blocks. That's the farthest I've been able to go, and that's with gliding. That's with going up at a certain angle and optimizing the math that you do to get there. The problem is that's not far enough. My goal for this machine is to get me to the Farlands. I'm going to be using a mod to get rid of the bug fix that gets rid of the Farlands, and I want to go visit in a modern server. Now, that will require going 12.5 million blocks, and this is not capable of this. I know there are other machines that could get me there in a short amount of time. I know I could go in the nether. I'm not going to be going via the nether because I want this to be part of my base. I want a giant rail. Imagine a Mac cannon from Halo. I want this giant rail cannon to be at the top of a mountain somewhere at my future base in EchoCraft Season 6, and I want to be able to use this to just all the way to the Farlands in one shot. 2 shots, maybe. Maybe if we can get halfway there, and then I build a second rail cannon in the middle at like 6.25 million blocks. That could be reasonable as well. But I need your guys' help. Take this design, experiment with it yourself. This is an incredible piece of machinery already, and it's really capable of getting you out far distances in case you want to have a base that's really far away, or maybe you just want to go exploring in completely unloaded chunks. Definitely, for sure. It's really good for something like that in a singular direction, but I know this can be pushed further, and I know there's people who are smarter at Redstone than me. So please, if you think you can optimize this and make it better and make it more efficient, allow it to propel someone further, please feel free. I'm going to be leaving a schematic and a world download in the description. Please help me out with this, and if you enjoyed, if this is something that you find interesting, please consider subscribing, and I'll see you in the next one. This is a bit of a one-off video, but I needed to share this. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.